Good evening. Driver license, please.
Officer, this is unnecessary. I'm Judge Marcus Redding, and this gentleman is my driver. We're coming from court.
Understood, sir. I still need everyone's identification for the record.
I just told you who I am.
And I heard you, but policy doesn't change. IDs, please.
Just hand it over, Judge. Let's get this done. I've got mine right here.
Blue lights reflected off wet pavement. A patrol car blocked the shoulder. The driver in the stopped sedan looked nervous. His hands gripped the wheel. In the back seat sat a man in a suit with silver hair and a stern stare. He held up a badge case and tapped the glass. The officer stepped closer. The badge belonged to a county judge. The judge ordered the officer to release the driver and move his unit. The officer did not move. He asked for licenses from everyone in the vehicle. The judge refused. Bodycam footage captured every second. The patrol supervisor arrived. Tension on that highway grew fast. The badge failed to shield the judge from the law. The stop turned into a long night. The highway stretched across flat land with tall grass on both sides. The sun dropped behind scattered clouds. Patrol Officer Mark Bowen sat in his cruiser near mile marker 42. His shift started 3 hours earlier. Radio traffic stayed light. A few speeding stops. One broken taillight. Nothing unusual. At 7:13 p.m., a black sedan rushed past his cruiser. The radar unit blinked 91. The posted limit was 65. Bowen pulled out, activated his lights, and accelerated behind the sedan. The driver slowed and rolled onto the shoulder near a long guardrail. Bowen parked behind the vehicle and reported the stop to dispatch. He approached on the driver's side. The driver lowered his window. Bowen smelled alcohol from inside the car. The driver's speech slurred. A man in the passenger seat shifted and stared forward. In the back seat sat an older man wearing a tailored suit. His hair looked silver under the fading sunlight. He watched Bowen with sharp focus. Bowen asked the driver for license and registration. The driver slid his wallet out with a shaking hand. Bowen saw glassy eyes and heavy eyelids. The passenger avoided eye contact. The backseat man kept his gaze on Bowen, silent and steady. Bowen asked the driver to exit the vehicle. The driver climbed out without argument. Bowen guided him to the front of the sedan and started field tests. The driver swayed on each step. His balance broke during the one-leg stand. His breath smelled of whiskey. Bowen knew the result before the test ended. He arrested the driver for speeding and impaired driving. He placed him in handcuffs and walked him toward the cruiser. As they passed the sedan's rear door, the older man lowered his window. He spoke in a low tone. He told Bowen to stop the arrest. Bowen continued walking. He placed the driver in the back of the cruiser and closed the door. Bowen returned to the sedan. The passenger handed over an ID. Bowen asked the older man for his name. The man opened a leather badge case and pressed it against the glass. The badge displayed gold lettering and a county seal. Under the seal, a title, County Judge. Bowen noted the badge and asked for identification. The judge said his badge served as identification. Bowen said department policy required a state ID for everyone present during a DUI investigation. The judge refused. Bowen told him the vehicle would be towed due to the driver's arrest. The judge said the sedan was not going anywhere. He instructed Bowen to step away from the car. Bowen stepped back and reported the situation to dispatch. He requested a supervisor. Road noise hummed across the shoulder. The passenger looked nervous. The judge stared at Bowen through the window with a cold expression. Officer Jaime Ruiz responded as backup. She parked behind Bowen's unit and approached the sedan. Bowen briefed her. Ruiz approached the back door and spoke through the window. The judge repeated his demand. He ordered both officers to remove handcuffs from the driver and release the vehicle. Ruiz kept her voice steady. She told the judge the investigation followed state law. She asked again for ID. The judge turned away and stared forward. Ruiz walked back to Bowen. She told him to hold position until the patrol sergeant arrived. They moved their cruisers slightly ahead for safety. Traffic rushed past at high speed. A pickup horn echoed across the guardrail. The judge stepped out of the sedan. He left the rear door open and stood near the shoulder. He held the badge case high. He said the road belonged to his jurisdiction. Ruiz ordered him to stand near the guardrail. The judge ignored her. He walked toward the front bumper of the sedan and pointed at Bowen's cruiser. The passenger stayed in the sedan and watched through the windshield. Bowen stood near his driver's door and observed every movement. Ruiz repeated the command. This time the judge stopped walking. He closed the badge case and slid it into his jacket. After 10 minutes, Sergeant Beck arrived. His vehicle stopped behind both cruisers. He stepped out and approached Bowen and Ruiz. Bowen explained the stop. He described the tests, the arrest, and the judge's refusal. Beck listened without expression. Then he walked toward the sedan. The judge stood tall near the front bumper. He crossed his arms. Beck introduced himself and asked for identification beyond the badge. The judge refused. He said the badge held enough authority. Beck shook his head. Policy required a physical ID. The judge said no. Beck warned him to follow lawful instructions. The judge stepped closer. He said the arrest was illegal. He said the driver would leave with him. Beck stayed calm. He told the judge interference would trigger new charges. A gust of wind swept dust between them. The judge kept his arms crossed. Traffic roared past. The sun fell lower. Inside the cruiser, the arrested driver sat motionless, his head down. Bowen checked the rear camera. The driver stayed quiet. Beck signaled Bowen and Ruiz to stand near the sedan. He told the judge the conversation would not continue without proper identification. The judge smirked. He walked back to the sedan's open door, reached inside, and picked up a phone. He started recording Beck and said he would report the department. He stepped closer to Bowen and filmed the bodycam on Bowen's chest. Ruiz ordered him to stay back. He ignored the warning. Ruiz placed a hand on her taser. Beck instructed Bowen to stand ready. The judge lowered the phone and returned it to his pocket. He said no city officer held power to detain him. Beck informed him that refusing lawful commands during a DUI arrest counted as obstruction. The judge waved his hand and walked away from the sedan's door. He said obstruction charges would not hold against his office. At that moment, a second supervisor arrived. Lieutenant Green pulled in behind Beck's car. Green stepped out with a calm face and approached Bowen. He asked for details. Bowen explained again. Green approached the judge and asked for cooperation. The judge raised his voice. He said every officer on the scene violated his rights. He demanded the cuffs removed from the driver. Green refused. He told the judge the impaired driver would go to jail. Green also told the judge the sedan could not remain on the shoulder. Green called for a tow truck. Bowen and Ruiz stood guard near the sedan. Beck remained near the judge. The tow truck arrived 15 minutes later. The driver inspected the vehicle and hooked it to the truck. The judge shouted at the tow driver. The driver ignored him and completed the hookup. The sedan lifted off the pavement. The judge tried to walk toward the tow driver, but Beck blocked him. The judge raised his phone again and recorded every movement. Bowen escorted the arrested driver to the jail. Ruiz followed in her cruiser. Beck and Green stayed on the scene with the judge and passenger. Bowen placed the driver in booking and filed the arrest affidavit. The jail clerk processed the paperwork. Bowen returned to his cruiser and drove back to the scene. When he arrived, the judge's tone changed. He demanded a patrol vehicle for transport. Green refused. The judge left with the passenger in a ride-share car summoned from his phone. Before he entered the ride-share, he stood on the shoulder and told the officers they made a mistake that would cost their department. The scene cleared. Bowen and Ruiz returned to patrol. Beck returned to the district office. Green filed a report to command. The next morning, Bowen received a message from the department's legal division. An internal review opened due to the judge's complaint. Bowen arrived at the station and reported to a conference room. A captain waited inside. She asked Bowen to detail the stop from beginning to end. Bowen described every step: the radar reading, the impaired behavior, the refusal from the judge, the threats of influence, the body cam footage. The captain listened and wrote notes. She thanked Bowen and dismissed him. Later that day, Bowen patrolled downtown. Shops closed for the night. Streetlights glowed across the sidewalks. A call came across the radio. Suspected shoplifting at a convenience store. Bowen responded. The store clerk said a woman stole snacks and left without paying. Bowen searched nearby streets and found her sitting at a bus stop. She handed over the items and apologized. The clerk declined charges. Bowen cleared a minor incident without friction. At midnight, Bowen parked near the courthouse to finish reports. Inside the courthouse, only a few lights stayed on. A security guard walked the hallway. Bowen looked at the tall stone entrance. He wondered if the judge worked inside that building earlier today. He wondered if the complaint reached city officials. 2 days passed. Bowen heard nothing new. He continued patrol without disruption. Ruiz handled a domestic dispute near an apartment complex. Bowen monitored traffic at a busy intersection. Calls stayed routine. Then dispatch alerted units of a stalled car on a sharp curve near the highway. Bowen responded. Ruiz arrived as backup. They found a sedan with hazard lights on and a flat tire. A woman stood near the trunk, distressed and shaking. Bowen asked if she needed assistance. She nodded. Ruiz retrieved tire tools. Bowen changed the tire and let her continue home. While they cleared the scene, a black vehicle rolled past. Bowen noticed a familiar figure in the back seat. The county judge. He stared through the window. Bowen watched the taillights fade. The following morning, Bowen reported for briefing. Sergeant Beck stood at the podium. He said command had reviewed bodycam footage from the DUI stop. The department supported the arrest and towing. The decision aligned with state law. The judge's refusal did not override the process. Beck told the room they handled the stop by the book. Some officers nodded. Others whispered. Bowen kept a straight face. Later that week, the internal review closed. The department announced no policy violations. The file stayed short and factual. Bowen returned to regular shifts with a clear record. 1 month later, a state prosecutor contacted Bowen regarding the DUI case. The prosecutor wanted Bowen's testimony in court. The driver hired a lawyer who argued the stop involved high-influence misuse. The lawyer claimed the judge's badge held authority to control the scene. The prosecutor asked Bowen to explain the legality of refusing demands from a judge during a roadside investigation. Bowen agreed. He prepared his report and stored bodycam footage on the secure server. The court date landed 2 weeks ahead. On the day of the trial, Bowen walked into the courthouse lobby. He saw the judge in the hallway. The judge wore a robe and stood near a chamber door. He noticed Bowen but turned away. Bowen took the stand later that morning. The prosecutor asked questions about the stop. Bowen answered with steady tone. The defense attorney challenged him about identification protocol. Bowen explained policy. He held his ground. The bodycam footage played on a monitor for the judge presiding over the case. The audio captured every command, refusal, and warning. The presiding judge paused the clip and addressed the defense attorney. He said the badge in the back seat did not grant authority to control a DUI stop. He said the arrest stood on legal ground. He said the officers followed the law. The jury returned a guilty verdict on impaired driving. The driver received sentencing that evening. The case ended. Bowen walked out of the courthouse. Rain fell across the steps. He took a deep breath and returned to his cruiser. His radio crackled. Dispatch requested him for a noise complaint near the river. Bowen turned the key and drove toward the riverfront. A crowd gathered outside a restaurant. Severe noise from speakers kept echoing across the street. Bowen spoke to the manager, who lowered the volume. The crowd cheered when the music resumed at legal level. Around 9:30 p.m., Bowen parked near a red brick building and looked toward City Hall. The windows glowed in straight rows. A single flag waved above the entrance. Bowen stepped out, stretched his legs, and leaned against the cruiser. He thought about the night on the highway. The badge flashed in his mind. The refusal, the threats, the court ruling, every second recorded. The city lights flicked across the windshield. Bowen climbed back into his cruiser and drove through downtown. His shift reached its halfway mark. The next call would arrive soon. He felt prepared for it. At 11:10 p.m., dispatch requested units near the Civic Center. A fight broke out between two men in the street. Bowen and Ruiz arrived together. One man stood near a bench holding his arm. The other lay on the sidewalk. Bowen separated them and called for medical help. The injured man needed stitches. Officers took statements and reviewed camera footage from the security system on the corner. As paramedics loaded the injured man into an ambulance, Bowen saw a familiar face across the street. The same county judge sat in a parked sedan watching the scene. He held his phone against the window and recorded in silence. The engine remained on. The headlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Bowen ignored him and finished the report. When the scene cleared, Bowen watched the sedan pull away. No words, no badge, no orders. The night stayed quiet until 2 a.m. When Bowen signed off his shift, he felt lighter. He drove home and slept until morning. Weeks passed without new complaints. The county judge never filed another report. Rumors spread that state officials reviewed his conduct. No official word reached the department. For Bowen, the memory stayed. Authority on the roadside followed law, not rank. A badge in the back seat did not erase impaired driving. Bodycam footage ended every doubt. The morning briefing room felt tense. Officers talked in low voices about the highway stop. Some supported Bowen without question. Others wondered if the judge would retaliate. Rumors spread fast inside a department. Bowen stayed silent. He read the daily assignment sheet and waited for instructions. Sergeant Beck opened the meeting. He reviewed overnight calls. He assigned patrol zones. He looked at Bowen and Ruiz. He said their shift would cover District 3. That district held the courthouse, city hall, and the central business block. Beck wanted steady patrol units there during the next few weeks. Bowen understood the message. The department wanted a watchful presence where authority met public view. At 10:45 a.m., Bowen drove past the courthouse. Lawyers walked across the plaza. News crews filmed interviews near the front steps. A reporter held a microphone and spoke about court reforms and bodycam transparency. Bowen waited at a red light. People on the sidewalk stared at the cruiser. A teenager waved. Bowen nodded and continued down the street. The day stayed quiet until early afternoon. Dispatch reported a vehicle blocking traffic near a bus stop. Bowen arrived and found a minivan with a dead battery. The driver looked frustrated. He said the van stalled and refused to start again. Bowen helped push the van off the lane and parked it near the curb. Ruiz called a tow for him. The driver thanked them and walked to the bus shelter. Traffic flowed again. After lunch, Bowen checked the lot behind City Hall. Cars in the employee lot looked normal. A few workers smoked near the back entrance. Nothing suspicious. Bowen returned to the cruiser and pulled onto the street. He received a radio call from Beck. The sergeant wanted Bowen to stop by the precinct and deliver an external drive to evidence. Bowen agreed. He parked near the substation, walked inside, and handed the drive to the clerk behind the glass window. The clerk signed the receipt. Bowen left the building and sat in the cruiser reading updates on his computer. While he typed notes, someone knocked on the passenger window. Bowen looked up. An older man stood outside. He recognized the silver hair and stern eyes. The same judge from the highway stop. Bowen stepped out of the cruiser. The judge stood with his hands behind his back. He asked if Bowen wanted to correct the mistake before deeper consequences formed. Bowen answered with calm voice. The arrest stayed lawful. The judge stepped closer. He asked if Bowen understood his position. Bowen stayed silent. A pair of officers walked out of the substation and noticed the exchange. The judge saw them and stepped away. He said the matter was not over. He walked to a black sedan parked across the street and left. Bowen stood still until the car disappeared. Inside the substation, Ruiz waited by the doorway. She said command would want a report about the contact. Bowen wrote a short summary and submitted it to Beck. The sergeant thanked him and said the department would handle any pushback from county officials. Hours passed without action. Bowen finished his shift at midnight and logged off. On the drive home, he noticed a black sedan parked near his apartment complex entrance. The engine ran. The headlights stayed off. Bowen drove past without slowing. He parked in his usual spot, walked to his apartment, and locked the door. For 2 days, Bowen worked routine calls. He responded to noise complaints, small disputes, and minor accidents. The judge did not reappear. Bowen relaxed slightly. Most roadside conflicts faded once evidence spoke for itself. On Saturday night, Bowen worked the downtown bar zone. Crowds filled sidewalks. Patrons stood in lines outside clubs. Officers monitored crosswalks and watched for impaired drivers leaving parking lots. Around 1 a.m., a fight broke out near a music venue. Bowen and Ruiz separated two men throwing punches near a bench. One man suffered a broken nose. Paramedics arrived fast. Officers took statements from witnesses. Both subjects admitted they drank too much. Neither wanted charges. Bowen wrote an incident report and cleared the scene. At 1:45 a.m., Bowen turned onto a side street. A black sedan parked near a fire hydrant. Bowen recognized the plate. The same vehicle used by the judge. Bowen parked and stepped out. The sedan engine ran. The rear door opened and the judge stepped out. He raised his phone and recorded Bowen on the sidewalk. Bowen stood near the cruiser door and waited. The judge said nothing. He circled the car and filmed the hydrant, the traffic sign, and Bowen's badge. Bowen told him that filming remained lawful. The judge gave a thin smile. He got back in the car and drove off. Bowen returned to the cruiser and logged the interaction. Ruiz radioed from the next block and asked if he needed backup. Bowen said the scene stayed calm. Ruiz continued her patrol. Bowen finished the shift without another incident. The next afternoon, Bowen received a call from the prosecutor handling the DUI case. She said the judge tried to contact her office. He wanted influence over the court date. He asked for dismissal based on professional courtesy. The prosecutor refused. She told Bowen that the judge's behavior changed from anger to silence. She suspected pressure behind closed doors. Bowen thanked her for the update. He hung up and prepared for another shift. He cleaned his cruiser, checked the radar unit, and tested lights and sirens. He walked into the locker room and saw Ruiz tightening her vest. She asked if he slept well. Bowen shrugged. She said word reached the precinct that the county board requested bodycam footage from the stop. Bowen nodded. The footage already sat in the evidence archive. Their shift started at 6 p.m. They patrolled the business district and stopped two speeders near the courthouse. One driver had a suspended license. Bowen arrested him and transported him without incident. At 9:30 p.m., dispatch reported an alarm at a jewelry store downtown. Bowen and Ruiz arrived. The storefront lights flashed. A broken window sat near the display case. The alarm blared. Footprints led toward an alley. Bowen called for K-9 support. Ruiz circled the block to block escape routes. The K-9 unit arrived. The dog tracked scent down the alley to a dumpster. Officers found a man hiding under cardboard. The suspect tried to run. Bowen tackled him. They cuffed him and recovered jewelry from his backpack. Store owners arrived and thanked officers. They praised fast response time. As officers loaded the suspect into a patrol car, a black sedan rolled past. The judge watched from behind the wheel. He slowed but did not stop. He drove away without a word. Ruiz looked at Bowen. He kept his expression flat. Back at the precinct, Bowen completed reports for the burglary arrest. He ate a quick meal at his desk and headed out again. The city lights glowed across the river. Music from bars echoed across downtown streets. Bowen checked each parking lot for impaired drivers. He stopped a gray coupe with expired tags. The driver stayed polite. Bowen issued a citation and cleared the stop. Near midnight, Bowen parked at a gas station for fuel. As he stepped out of the cruiser, a black sedan pulled in behind him. The judge stepped out and walked directly toward him. Bowen braced, ready for another confrontation. Instead, the judge stopped at the hood of the cruiser. He placed a folded envelope on the hood and stepped back. The judge said the envelope contained a statement. He claimed the statement described misconduct during the DUI stop. Bowen did not pick it up. He asked if the judge wanted to submit the statement through official records. The judge smirked and said the envelope already reached the press. He walked to his car and left. Bowen stood still for a moment. The gas pump beeped, signaling a full tank. Bowen placed the envelope in an evidence bag and filed it at the precinct. The envelope contained accusations of abuse, discrimination, and disrespect. None matched the footage. None matched the reports from that night. Command staff received the document. 2 lieutenants and a captain reviewed bodycam footage again. They compared timestamps, audio, and witness statements. They dismissed the accusations as baseless. They prepared a formal response and forwarded it to the police commissioner. Days later, cameras gathered outside the courthouse. Reporters waited near the steps. A press conference began at noon. The police commissioner stood at a podium and addressed the crowd. Bowen watched from a distance. The commissioner stated that bodycam footage contradicted the written accusations. He said the stop remained lawful. He praised Bowen and Ruiz for remaining professional. He cited state law regarding DUI protocol. The press conference ended. Reporters scattered. Some chased rumors of political fallout. Others filmed short segments about officer accountability and transparency rules. Bowen walked away before anyone noticed him. That evening, Bowen started patrol again. Ruiz talked about the press conference. She said officers needed thick skin. She said body cams protected truth when influence failed. Bowen nodded. At 10:14 p.m., dispatch reported a crash near the highway bridge. Bowen arrived. A pickup truck struck a guardrail. The driver lay on the ground, conscious but shaken. Bowen called for EMS. Paramedics evaluated the driver and transported him for further care. Bowen secured the scene and filled out a crash report. While he worked, a black sedan stopped across the street. The judge filmed from inside the car. Bowen ignored him. An officer walked past the sedan and told the driver to move. The sedan rolled away without argument. 2 days later, Bowen played basketball with off-duty officers at a local gym. They talked about normal life, family, sports, weekend plans. Bowen enjoyed a break from the tension. After the game, he walked to his truck and saw a note under the wiper. No envelope, no signature. The note said, "The badge holds greater reach than you think." Bowen folded it and placed it in a drawer at home. He informed Beck and handed over the note. Beck logged it but said the message contained no threat. The prosecutor called Bowen again. She said the DUI case moved toward sentencing. The driver kept quiet. His attorney wanted a light penalty. The judge from the back seat offered no statement in support of the driver. The prosecutor expected no appeal. A week passed. Bowen patrolled District 3. New businesses opened near the plaza. Families visited parks after sunset. The atmosphere felt lighter. Officers joked at roll call. The judge's presence faded from conversation. Then, during an early morning shift, dispatch reported a domestic disturbance inside the judge's neighborhood. Bowen and Ruiz responded. They parked near a quiet cul-de-sac lined with trimmed lawns and porch lights. A neighbor waited outside and waved them over. She said arguing from a nearby home shattered the night's silence. She said she heard shouting and glass breaking. Bowen walked to the home and knocked on the door. No response. He knocked again. Ruiz moved to the side window. She saw a lamp on the floor. Something looked off. Bowen knocked a third time and announced presence. The door opened. A younger man stepped into the doorway. He appeared out of breath. He said everything stayed fine. Ruiz asked if someone else remained inside. The man hesitated. Bowen asked if anyone needed medical attention. The man said no. His tone lacked confidence. Ruiz asked if they could enter to confirm safety. The man stepped aside. Bowen scanned the living room. Glass shards near a coffee table. A painting tilted on the wall. A woman sat on the couch with her hands trembling. She whispered that she wanted paramedics. Bowen called EMS. The younger man paced near the kitchen. He insisted no crime occurred. Officers separated him from the woman. Paramedics arrived and checked her for injuries. She declined transport but wanted to file a report. While Bowen took her statement, he heard footsteps on the stairs. The county judge appeared in the hallway. He wore casual clothes and looked tired. He saw Bowen and Ruiz and froze. The woman on the couch lowered her head. Bowen finished the statement. The judge kept silent. He did not raise his badge. He did not order anyone around. He watched Ruiz write names and timestamps. Bowen noted broken glass and stress marks on the woman's arms. The younger man became agitated and tried to interrupt. Bowen held out a hand and told him to wait. The judge stepped forward and asked Ruiz if charges would be filed. Ruiz answered that evidence and statements determined next steps. The judge nodded. He said nothing more. He walked back upstairs, slow and quiet. Paramedics advised the woman to contact a support center. Bowen provided a contact card. Ruiz asked if she needed a safe place for the night. The woman said she would stay at her sister's home. She packed a bag, thanked the officers, and left with her sister. Bowen and Ruiz stepped outside. The door closed behind them. The cul-de-sac remained silent. Porch lights glowed. The air felt still. They returned to the cruiser. Ruiz started typing the report in the onboard computer. Bowen stared through the windshield. He thought about the judge's sudden silence. No badge, no command, no threats. Only quiet acceptance of law inside his own home. Sunlight hit the courthouse steps as Bowen parked near the plaza. His patrol shift began at 7 a.m. He checked his laptop for new reports. Overnight logs showed no major incidents. The domestic disturbance from the judge's neighborhood appeared in the system. The report stayed short and factual. No arrests. No charges. Bowen closed the screen and watched workers clean the fountain near the plaza. At 8:30 a.m., Ruiz radioed from the other side of District 3. She stopped a vehicle with an expired tag. The driver cooperated. Bowen continued routine patrol. He drove past City Hall, the Civic Center, and the museum. School buses moved down Main Street. Children walked across crosswalks with crossing guards. The district felt calm. 30 minutes later, dispatch reported theft at a downtown pharmacy. Bowen arrived first. The manager pointed toward a young man near a dumpster. Bowen approached with steady steps. The man surrendered without struggle. He dropped 2 stolen bottles of medicine and apologized. Bowen placed him in cuffs and called Ruiz. She arrived fast and transported the suspect to processing. The manager thanked Bowen and cleaned the broken shelf. Bowen finished the report and returned to patrol. The courthouse held a large crowd for a public hearing. People carried signs and chanted outside. Officers monitored the sidewalks to prevent conflict. Bowen parked near the edge of the plaza. Protesters shouted at city officials entering the building. Some filmed with phones. Bowen made sure traffic did not block emergency lanes. A group gathered near Bowen's cruiser. One man held a camera and asked for the officer's badge number. Bowen stated his badge number and name. Another man asked about department rules for recording. Bowen explained that the law allowed recording of public officials. The crowd moved on and joined the main protest line. At noon, the hearing ended. Speakers walked outside and addressed supporters. Reporters interviewed them. Bowen observed from the sidewalk. The event dissolved after 20 minutes. People dispersed. The plaza became quiet again. Bowen climbed back into his cruiser and drove toward the riverfront. He stopped at a diner for a quick meal. As he sat in the cruiser eating, a black sedan parked across the street. The judge stepped out and stood on the sidewalk. He watched Bowen through the windshield. Bowen took another bite and finished eating. The judge crossed the street and approached the cruiser. He stopped 2 steps from the driver's window and tapped the glass. Bowen lowered the window. The judge spoke in a calm voice. He said lawyers advised him to avoid further public pressure. He said the department used bodycam footage against him. Bowen stayed silent. The judge asked if Bowen enjoyed public attention from the press conference. Bowen shook his head. The judge asked if Bowen believed the DUI arrest fixed anything in the city. Bowen gave a simple answer. The law applied to every driver. The judge looked away and walked back to his sedan. He drove off without another word. Later that afternoon, dispatch called Bowen to a disturbance near a bank. A man stood near the entrance yelling about fraud. Bank employees locked the doors. Bowen arrived and asked the man to step away from the entrance. The man cooperated. He said a teller refused to cash his check. Bowen talked him down and guided him off private property. The man left without arrest. The bank reopened. At 5:00 p.m., Ruiz found Bowen near the courthouse. She parked beside him and asked about the judge. Bowen told her about the diner. Ruiz frowned. She said the judge needed attention and grew frustrated when ignored. Bowen agreed. He advised her to keep reports detailed in case of another complaint. Around 7:20 p.m., night patrol began. Bowen checked traffic near a sports bar. A crowd gathered for a televised game. Officers positioned units near the exits. Bowen watched for impaired drivers. 2 hours passed without issues. At 9:34 p.m., dispatch reported a hit-and-run on Maple Street. A pedestrian suffered a broken leg. Witnesses described a silver sedan leaving the scene. Bowen reached the area. The victim sat on the curb holding his leg. Paramedics treated him. Bowen gathered witness statements. A woman pointed west and said the car sped away fast. Bowen and Ruiz searched the side streets. They found a silver sedan with fresh damage and a crushed bumper. The driver sat inside with hands shaking. Bowen ordered him out. The driver stepped out and admitted guilt. He said panic drove him away. He accepted arrest without resistance. Bowen cuffed him and placed him in the cruiser. Ruiz documented tire marks and debris. As they loaded the driver for transport, a familiar black sedan stopped half a block away. The judge filmed from the sidewalk. He circled the scene and recorded the vehicle damage, the victim, the debris, and Bowen. He asked Ruiz why she arrested the driver. Ruiz stated the charges and walked back to the evidence markers. Bowen watched the judge record each detail. The judge asked Bowen if the department wanted another headline. Bowen ignored the provocation. He transported the driver. Ruiz followed. The judge filmed the cruisers as they left the scene. The next morning, Bowen drove to the courthouse for a scheduled testimony in a theft case. He parked behind the building, walked through the employee entrance, and checked in with security. He entered the courtroom and waited on a bench near the witness stand. During a short recess, the judge from the highway stop walked past the courtroom door. He looked inside. His expression stayed neutral. He did not speak. Bowen understood the message. Presence served as pressure. After testimony, Bowen clocked out and went home. He exercised, showered, and slept. He woke before sunrise and returned to the station. The new shift looked slow. Officers reviewed a string of minor thefts from vehicles. Bowen patrolled neighborhoods with Ruiz. Residents walked dogs. Joggers filled sidewalks. The city looked peaceful. That afternoon, dispatch reported a stalled truck on a bridge. Bowen responded. The driver needed help pushing the truck to the shoulder. Bowen called a tow and directed traffic. The truck moved off the bridge. Drivers resumed normal flow. Bowen radioed clear and returned downtown. When he reached the plaza, he spotted the judge walking across the street. The judge approached a group of teenagers near the fountain. They filmed skate tricks for social media. The judge gave instructions to move away from the water. The teenagers ignored him. Bowen watched from his cruiser. The judge turned and stared at Bowen. His expression showed irritation. Bowen stepped out and walked toward the fountain. He asked the teenagers to move a few feet for safety. They complied without argument. The judge opened his mouth but did not speak. He walked away toward City Hall. Bowen returned to the cruiser. Ruiz asked what happened. Bowen told her the judge wanted control. Ruiz shook her head. That evening, Bowen stopped a speeding car near the Civic Center. The driver accepted a warning. As Bowen closed the traffic stop, a unit called for backup near a closed gas station. 2 suspects tried to break into a supply shed. Bowen drove there with sirens activated. When he arrived, 2 officers detained both suspects behind the building. Bowen helped search the shed. Tools and paint cans scattered across the floor. The fence showed fresh wire damage. Officers logged the break-in. No injuries. Both suspects went to jail. At the jail, Bowen saw the driver from the DUI case sitting on a bench waiting for a bond hearing. The driver looked tired. He nodded at Bowen. Bowen nodded back. The jail sergeant processed the suspects from the shed break-in. Bowen delivered paperwork and returned to his cruiser. On the drive back to District 3, he passed the courthouse parking lot. The judge's sedan sat in a corner space. The judge sat inside reading something on his phone. Bowen continued down the street. He felt frustration in his chest but kept his focus on the road. The next day, Bowen received a notice from the Professional Standards Division. The department found no wrongdoing in the domestic call at the judge's house. The report praised proper procedure. Bowen folded the notice and placed it in his file cabinet. For a week, the judge stayed out of sight. Bowen resumed routine duties. He responded to accidents, welfare checks, and shoplifting calls. His name left the rumor mill. Officers joked that the judge found a new target. On a Thursday night, Bowen patrolled near a grocery store. A thunderstorm formed above the city. Rain poured across the roof. Lightning cracked overhead. Bowen parked under a gas station canopy and waited for the storm to pass. During the storm, a black sedan pulled into the lot. The judge stepped out and walked toward Bowen. Rain drenched his suit. He knocked on the passenger window. Bowen lowered it. The judge spoke in a flat tone. He said the state board reviewed his badge authority. He said nothing in that process changed his power. Bowen gave a simple reply. Authority never changed roadside protocol. The judge stared at him through sheets of storm water. He told Bowen that influence reached farther than laws. Bowen answered with one sentence. Influence did not drive departments. The judge stepped back and left. 2 days later, the city hosted a parade downtown. Families lined the street. Floats moved past crowds. The mayor shook hands with children. Officers directed traffic. Bowen and Ruiz patrolled on foot. A brass band played in the plaza. Vendors sold food on every corner. Bowen noticed the judge standing near a coffee cart recording the parade. The judge filmed officers shaking hands with the crowd. He filmed the family of the mayor waving from the street. Bowen ignored him. When the parade ended, Ruiz and Bowen walked toward their cruisers. A reporter intercepted Bowen. She asked for comment about the parade. Bowen declined and pointed her toward the public information officer near the courthouse lawn. The reporter ran off. Bowen unlocked the cruiser and paused. The black sedan rolled past again. The judge rolled down the window. He spoke loud enough for Bowen to hear. He said the department escaped embarrassment this time. He drove off. The mayor held a reception at the Civic Center that night. Officers provided security near the entrance. Bowen stood near a side door watching delivery trucks unload supplies. A catering worker told him about suspicious activity near the loading dock. Bowen walked behind the building and found a man attempting to break into a locked door. Bowen detained him and called Ruiz. They arrested him for attempted burglary. During the arrest, the judge appeared again. He filmed from the sidewalk behind a row of trees. Bowen finished the scene and transported the suspect. The judge followed in his sedan but kept a distance. Later that night, Bowen parked behind the substation. Rain from the early storm left puddles across the lot. Bowen walked inside and saw Ruiz sitting at a desk. She said the department planned a briefing about the judge. Bowen waited until Beck entered the room with a folder. Beck spoke with a firm voice. The county board opened a review of the judge's behavior. They studied bodycam footage from the highway stop, the domestic disturbance, and the parade. They interviewed witnesses. They collected documents. They examined a pattern of behavior in public spaces. Beck said the department responded to the review with full cooperation. Officers provided videos, incident reports, and radio logs. The county board requested interviews with officers. Bowen and Ruiz would speak first. They agreed. At 9:01 a.m. the next day, Bowen sat in a conference room. 2 county investigators asked questions about the highway arrest. Bowen described every step without emotion. They asked if the judge pressured him. Bowen answered honestly. They asked if the judge displayed aggression. Bowen answered with measured words. They took notes and thanked him. Ruiz received similar questions. Beck answered questions about department policy. Command staff provided legal documentation. A week later, the board delivered findings. They stated the judge attempted influence. They stated his behavior raised concerns. They forwarded a recommendation to the State Commission for Judicial Conduct. The public learned nothing at first. The process stayed quiet. Bowen patrolled District 3 as routine returned. People walked dogs. Families shopped downtown. The plaza remained peaceful. Bowen passed the courthouse and saw no black sedan. The judge did not appear near the fountain. The sidewalk stayed empty. One night, Bowen passed a park near the river. Children played near swing sets. Parents sat on benches. Bowen parked and watched the area. He remembered the highway shoulder, the badge at the window, and the raised voice. He remembered the parade and the domestic call. He remembered every tense moment. He shifted in his seat. The radio stayed silent. The park lights glowed across the grass. A train horn echoed from a distance. Chapter 3 ended the way the judge's influence ended. Quiet, no pressure, no badge held against the window. Only law and steady patrol. Morning traffic flowed through District 3. Bowen sat in his cruiser watching commuters drive toward downtown. A bakery truck parked near a construction site. Workers poured concrete for a new sidewalk. School buses rolled past. The day looked normal. Bowen checked messages on his laptop. No urgent calls. The department waited for news from the state commission. At 9:15 a.m., dispatch reported a stalled van on East Bridge Avenue. The driver requested help moving it from the road. Bowen arrived and found a family inside. He placed flares, called a tow, and guided the family to a safe shoulder. The tow arrived and removed the van. Bowen cleared the scene and continued patrol. He stopped at a small cafe for lunch. He sat in the cruiser with the window open. The smell of coffee filled the air. People walked past with shopping bags. Nothing felt tense. Bowen finished eating and threw away the cup. In the afternoon, the department held a patrol briefing. Beck stood at the front of the room holding a document. Officers gathered around the table. Beck announced that the state commission released a statement. They found evidence of misconduct. They opened a formal investigation into the judge. Silence filled the room. Officers exchanged glances. Bowen leaned back in his chair. Ruiz looked relieved. Beck said the state commission requested more footage from the highway stop and the domestic call. They wanted interviews with Beck, Ruiz, and Bowen. They asked for radio logs and witness lists. Beck told the room to stay professional and direct all media requests to the public information officer. Officers nodded and returned to their duties. Bowen left the station with Ruiz. They stepped outside the doors. A reporter waited on the sidewalk. She asked Bowen for comment. He instructed her to speak with the department's information officer. She turned and left. That night, Bowen patrolled near the Civic Center. A concert ended. Families walked to their cars. Officers directed traffic. After the crowd cleared, Bowen drove toward the courthouse. The plaza looked empty. The fountain lights reflected off the wet pavement from sprinklers. He parked the cruiser and stepped out. He walked to the fountain and leaned on its edge. The courthouse doors stayed locked. No black sedan. No tension. Bowen returned to the cruiser and finished his shift without incident. 2 days later, the state commission scheduled interviews at the courthouse. Bowen arrived early. He wore a pressed uniform and carried his report from the highway stop. The commission met in a small conference room on the second floor. 2 investigators and a state attorney greeted him. They asked detailed questions. They asked about the judge's words and tone. They asked about the driver's impairment. They asked why Bowen refused to release the driver despite the badge. Bowen answered with clear statements. The law required enforcement. The badge did not change procedure. Next, they asked about the domestic disturbance. Bowen explained every step of the call. He described the judge's behavior. He stated that he followed policy. The investigators thanked him for his cooperation and dismissed him. Outside the courthouse, Ruiz waited on the sidewalk. She completed her interview an hour earlier. They walked to the lot and drove back to the station. Beck asked how it went. Bowen said the questions stayed focused and direct. Days passed. The commission reviewed thousands of documents and hours of video. News outlets learned about the investigation and published articles. Comment sections filled with opinions. Some supported the judge. Others sided with the department. Bowen ignored the noise and kept his focus on patrol. On a Saturday evening, Bowen and Ruiz responded to a disturbance in a housing complex. A man threatened neighbors with a metal bar. Bowen approached from one side. Ruiz approached from the other. The man dropped the bar when he saw both officers. Bowen cuffed him. Ruiz checked on the neighbors. No injuries. Bowen transported the man to the jail. When he exited the booking room, he saw the judge in the visitor area. The judge sat behind glass speaking to someone on a phone. Bowen continued walking without stopping. The next week brought another shift change. Officers received new assignments. Bowen gained a new patrol partner for 2 nights. Ruiz moved to a special events detail for a festival downtown. Bowen trained a rookie officer named Daniels. Daniels asked questions about procedure. Bowen answered each one with short explanations. On the rookie's second night, dispatch reported a theft at a hardware store. The suspects fled in a pickup. Bowen spotted the truck turning onto Riverbend Road. He hit lights and siren. The truck sped forward. Daniels called the pursuit over the radio. The suspects turned into an alley and stopped. 2 men fled on foot. Bowen chased one. Daniels chased the other. Bowen tackled his suspect near a fence and arrested him. Daniels caught the second suspect near a dumpster. Officers searched the truck and found stolen tools. Bowen and Daniels transported both suspects to the jail. Inside the jail, Bowen saw the judge again. This time, the judge stood near the property desk signing paperwork. He looked tired. His suit hung loose on his shoulders. He glanced at Bowen. Bowen did not react. The judge returned his attention to the document. Bowen completed the booking paperwork and left. Outside, Daniels asked about the judge. Bowen offered no opinion. He told the rookie to stay focused on the job. That night, Bowen parked near the river and listened to the radio. A breeze carried the smell of the water. Streetlights reflected across the surface. Bowen felt a calm settle inside him. The judge's presence no longer controlled his thoughts. The law guided every decision. Nothing else. A week later, the state commission reached a decision. They suspended the judge. A public statement listed misconduct and abuse of authority. They forwarded the case to the state Supreme Court for possible removal from the bench. The city reacted fast. News vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters delivered live segments from the plaza. Residents read headlines on their phones. City Council issued a short statement. The department issued a statement and declined further comment. Bowen continued patrol. He drove past the courthouse and saw empty spaces where the black sedan used to park. The fountain splashed water into the basin. The steps stayed clear. No confrontation. No lingering argument. Ruiz returned to patrol. She walked toward Bowen's cruiser at shift change. She told him the county council voted to support the commission's recommendation. Bowen nodded. Days rolled into weeks. The city's routines returned. Officers handled daily calls without interference. The judge disappeared from view. The public moved on to new issues. Bowen stayed steady. 1 month later, Bowen received a letter from the department. The letter thanked him for professionalism during a high-profile confrontation. It praised his adherence to law and procedure. It thanked Ruiz as well. Bowen placed the letter in his file and closed the cabinet. That night, Bowen drove through District 3. He passed the plaza and the courthouse. He turned onto Maple Street and watched evening traffic. He parked near the riverfront. Couples walked the boardwalk. The city glowed under street lamps. Bowen stepped out and leaned on the cruiser hood. He watched the water roll under the bridge. Across the street, shops prepared to close. The park lights flickered on. Bowen took a quiet breath and returned to the cruiser. His phone buzzed. A message from the public information officer arrived. The state Supreme Court removed the judge from the bench. The ruling stated that public trust demanded accountability. Bowen read the message twice. He locked the phone and started the engine. He drove through the district one more time. Streets stretched quiet. The station glowed under security lights. Officers walked in and out of the lobby. Bowen parked next to Ruiz's unit. She stepped out and asked if he heard the news. Bowen nodded. Ruiz smiled. Inside the station, Beck held a short meeting. He said the department served the city with focus and professionalism. He thanked the officers for composure during difficult moments. He dismissed the group and told everyone to stay safe. Bowen returned to his cruiser. He started his shift. Night traffic flowed across the city. Calls arrived and officers responded. District 3 moved forward. Months later, no one talked about the judge. New officers never heard the story. The city focused on road repairs, school events, and community programs. Bowen continued patrol without spectacle. The fountain at the plaza splashed through every season. The courthouse doors remained open for daily hearings. Bowen passed them each morning and night. No black sedan. No confrontation. Law did its work. Evidence spoke. Authority stood firm. Bowen watched over District 3 as always. No headlines, no attention, only steady patrol and the code he lived by. Thanks for watching. The next episode drops soon with another case where a routine stop changed an officer's night. For updates and a free guide on police body cam requests, check the link in the description. Stay safe and stay aware.